understand that time, that precious, precious resource is your own, and you're spending it doing what you want at least a little bit of the day, that lights you up a little bit, allowing you the space and the time to breathe and dream a little bit, like that's the secret sauce.
Welcome to The Career Flipper, a weekly podcast featuring career change stories from people all around the world, from all kinds of industries. We talk about how they get from point A to point B and all the twists and turns in between. If you've been thinking about switching careers, consider this your permission slip. I'm your host, Jenny Dempsey, a career flipper myself. After many years working in customer service and experience leadership in the tech startup world, I got laid off and stumbled into furniture flipping, taking pieces, headed for the trash, and giving them a second chance. If you're into that sort of thing, follow me over on Instagram and TikTok under San Diego Furniture Flipper. But I started this podcast because I felt really weird and alone when I switched from tech into furniture restoration. But as I've been flipping my own career, I've discovered that I'm not the only one making big changes. So I figured, why not talk to others and share their stories? We all have a lot to learn from one another. So I hope that this episode gives you a little actionable boost of inspiration for your own career journey too. So, question for you. Have you ever stopped to think about how you're really spending your time? Lauren Eimers of Boise, Idaho has, and her journey might just inspire you to take a closer look. She's made some major career pivots, from mental health to genetic counseling, then into tech through marketing and customer support. Along the way, she's learned a lot about finding joy in everyday moments and how helping others can really make all the difference for her. Lauren also shares how becoming a mom helped her reevaluate her entire career path and what really matters. Her story is a reminder that sometimes it's okay to have one foot in and one foot out and get knocked down a few times before we're really ready to take the leap. Let's get into her story now. Hello, Lauren. Welcome to the Career Flipper.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and chat with you today. I think we've got lots to talk about.
Oh, we do. We were just chatting for a good 15 minutes before we clicked the record button. I'm like, oh, we need to be recording this. This is for sure. Well, tell everyone a little bit about you.
Okay, well, my name is Lauren Eimers, or you might see me with my full name, Lauren Rose Eimers online. And yes, I'm a serial career flipper. And I think honestly, the more I thought about this and the more I've been listening to folks on the show, aren't we all career flippers at the end of the day?
Yeah.
I would be truly surprised to find someone who started their, education or career journey and are still in that today after being in it for a decade or two or three or four. I think all of us have these journeys and life gives us these twists and turns, and it's fun to take these leaps. But I started out, like many folks in academia. I started wanting to become a doctor way back in the day. And as a lot of folks know, pre-med prerequisites are pretty intense. And I kept getting hung up in organic chemistry, which interestingly enough, though, that was my highest score on the MCAT, even though I had to take OChem like three times to get a pretty good grade. But after, shadowing doctors and seeing their work-life balance, I knew that just, I don't think I could have done it. It was such a sacrifice, and I still have such admiration for MDs in the medical world. We ask so much of them, and so few get the work-life balance that I think is really necessary to live a really full and fulfilling life. So I then decided to jump into mental health. And so I got my master's degree, became a therapist with a counseling psychology background. And I loved that, but I missed the science. So then I jumped to back into school, got another master's degree, and this time in genetic counseling. So that was like a really great mix of both hard science and soft science. And I was able to work in perinatal genetics, which I loved. But I had a big life transition that happens to many of us. I became a parent myself, and back to that good old work-life balance. I just couldn't handle my 14, 15-hour days in clinic. So I kind of jumped off the cliff and jumped into the software industry and found my footing in support, technical support. And that kind of twisted and turned and worked for quite a while in that. And I'm still in kind of the technical industry, but now I work at a bioscience company where I'm not only working with like consumer experience, but I'm also working in the marketing realm. So I don't think, again, you can't really draw a straight line from, this person was pre-med and now she's working in marketing.
Yeah. And that's
So
how we know each other from that
yeah,
last part from the support driven community, customer consumer experience world. And it's been interesting hearing all of those jumps because there's things you obviously gravitate towards. Like there's things that light you up, the science, and obviously helping others. And so there's kind of like this way that you've blended that together throughout your career. And now you're in a place where you're doing it from, you know, a very like technical standpoint, but it's also the science is still there. And I think that's a big call out because some people think in their job, like, well, I don't like what I do. So it's like, well, what do you like? And how do you figure out how to shape your career around the things that you do enjoy? Because I think sometimes it's hard to piece it together and we think very much in a box of like, I gotta be a doctor if I want to do these things. But really, there's other industries that offer these things. And sometimes it sounds like maybe like with your story, you just got to get creative. So I'm curious, like, how do you on the day to day still find like the things that bring you joy when you're maybe responding to a consumer or, creating content for marketing? Like, how do you still do those things that you've worked for in the past that you really enjoyed?
I think that's an amazing question. And I think honestly, we could apply this to like everything. Like, how do you find
Right.
the little
Yeah.
slices of joy in the everyday? And just to kind of, get existential on you. I mean,
Let's do it.
there aren't really, I mean, the way that humans experience joy is really through these little bites and tastes and snippets. Like, there's not this 24 hours of joy, right? Like, I
Yeah.
don't even think the human brain could handle it. Like, we don't produce
No.
enough dopamine and feel good chemicals to experience that all for a huge extended period of time. So, truly, snippets of joy is like the secret sauce, I think, to living a happy career life and just life in general. I mean, I'm not telling you how to live your life, but it certainly helped me, especially through some serious tumult, right? Like, I don't know if you were a human being on planet Earth in 2020, but like stuff was weird and stuff
Hmm.
was difficult. And
Yeah.
finding these little snippets of joy really helps sustain, right? Because things were really turned on their head.
Yeah.
And that happens on the micro level too, like layoffs or title changes or role changes in your relationship status or you become a parent. Like, I think these can be joyous. Some of these can be very joyous, but they also really challenge how you move through the day, how you move through life, right?
Right.
Um, so back to the joy question for finding these little bits and pieces where again, I talk about kind of the golden thread that like weaves your days together and then your weeks and then your months and then your years. And for me, that golden thread truly is being able to show up for folks and help in some way, shape, or form. And I mean, I'm not Mr. Rogers. Like, I don't think anyone could be him. He was amazing. But I do derive a lot of my own self-worth from being able to help others. So in a consumer experience or customer service or customer support realm, you do get that day in and day out, be it answering an email or helping someone on social media, or even just going and liking someone's post that said something nice about the company you're working for. Like you can help in these little ways, and that's a little burst of joy, right?
Yeah.
Being able to help. Now, are customers grumpy sometimes? Is that a joyful experience? Absolutely not. But
Right.
it is really, I think it makes the next experience when someone is genuine and kind and thanks you for your interaction all the better, right?
Yeah.
You get the salty with the sweet. And
Yes.
so sometimes it makes those kind interactions all the better. I also think working on a team is another way to get a little bit of joy, right? Like I don't necessarily have to help someone outwardly facing, but being able to help someone on my team, holding space for them if they're having a tough day, being able to celebrate small wins for them, like those are little bits of ways to infuse joy as well. And I think this doesn't necessarily have to be the way you navigate throughout your day, but it really can help
Yeah.
create just like a midday and turn it into a thumbs up day, right?
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. And I think, one of the things that you mentioned was that how part of your self-worth is kind of attached to helping people. And that resonates so much with me working in customer service and customer experience, just because I'm like, what is it, a 2 on the Enneagram? Like I'm a helper. Like I want to be able to do that. And I think that is what had brought me so much joy working in customer service and customer experience for so long. And so now with, this form of the podcast or even furniture flipping, being able to solve a problem and make someone's life better and help them out really just like lights me up. So I think exactly what you said. It's the day-to-day things. It's the golden thread. I love that image of what's that, how is that going to weave through all of the things and kind of like getting in tune with ourselves to what that is for ourselves and how we can apply it to whatever we do in our work lives, in our personal lives, in all of that. So okay, I'm gonna jump back. I jump back a lot. So I have a
Oh,
question for
that's
you about
okay.
something else. So I'm not a parent, but I know a lot of people that are, and I know a lot of people listening are. And one thing that you said, that moment when you were, you were working 14, 15-hour days and you were just become a parent and you're like, this isn't going to work for me. And I'm curious at that time, if you can think back to it, what was going through your mind of like, what am I going to do? Like, am I good if I leave this job, this stability? What is out there for me? Because there's that like pivot moment where maybe the unknown wasn't paved yet. Maybe the technology or that part wasn't really there, or maybe it was. But can you talk a little bit more about how you made that decision to leave the stability of this job, and knowing that it wasn't the right work-life balance for you?
Oh, I love this question. And I think, well, it's a multifactorial decision, right? I
Yeah.
think the older I get and the more hard decisions, I shouldn't say hard, but just challenging decisions I have to make, it's never clear cut. I mean, if I could get a full on 100% yes or 100% no, I would take that. I would love that.
Oh my
And maybe
gosh,
that's why I
yes.
was drawn to genetics because you can test for the presence of a genetic mutation and it's a clear yes or no. I love that.
Yes.
But you don't really get that often in life. But I will say that after having my child, I really did try to make it work. I had to go back to work when my newborn was 6 weeks old, which also seems kind of silly when you work in perinatal genetics. And they were like, you only got 6 weeks parental leave? Okay. That's a
Yeah.
whole different
Yeah.
podcast, so I think I need to move on.
Yes,
But
definitely.
all that to say, I was really learning how to be a parent for the first time. I was one of those moms that prepared for the labor and delivery, and I kind of spaced that I would be taking the baby home and have to figure out what to do after it. So, like, and then they handed this beautiful, small, fresh little human back to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, I got to figure out what to do now. So, those first 6 weeks were, incredibly educational. And I am so lucky that my baby was such a good teacher. She whipped me into shape. She let me know when I was messing up, when I was doing things wrong. Honestly, she was the best boss I could have asked for because she was really quick to correct me, but she was also quick to forgive and let me try different and new ways to do something. So I credit my boss to also helping me get my priorities straight pretty darn
Mhm,
quick.
mhm.
I tried going back to clinic when she was 6 weeks old, and it lasted only for about 3 months after that. I was trying to, this is TMI for some, but parents that have exclusively breastfed will identify with this. I was trying to exclusively breastfeed. I was like pumping in between seeing patients, which if anyone has had to pump, it's like intense and it's just a lot. But I ended up getting infections a couple of times over the 3 months just because I wasn't able to pump properly for long enough, all of this stuff. And I didn't want to risk something that I had placed a high priority on, which was, being able to feed my child exclusively with breast milk. And just a caveat, a fed baby is the best way to feed, be it formula, a mix, or just breastfeeding. I don't want to place any judgment on there. This is just my path and what I had really tried for myself and for my baby. But I'm not putting any judgment or telling you what's right or wrong, because I think there's a lot of guilt that goes into rearing children and how you choose to. But I'm talking about my path solely. But that was very important to me. And so after the second time, I got incredibly sick, like high fever. I had to call in sick to work. I was like, something's got to give. So at that point, it was really when, and I think a lot of tough decisions are made when you're kind of in a rock bottom, right?
Yeah.
And either your body's breaking down, your relationships are breaking down, or something in your exterior world is breaking down to force you into making difficult decisions, right?
Yeah.
Because I was one of those people who just thought I could do it all. I unfortunately was also raised with like, the girl, you can do it all. You can bring home the bacon and cook it too, which I have issues with that as well. No one person should have to do it all.
Yeah.
We need community. We need help. We need to be able to take breaks to let other parts of our lives generate and grow. At that point, I was like, all right, I got to answer to this, my new little boss. She's my number one CEO, and my job is second to my little boss that I have to answer to at home. And so I had a real reckoning with, okay, this isn't going to work. So what's going to give? At that point in time, I approached my boss, and she is and remains one of the most lovely doctors I've ever worked with. And she too is a parent. And I just let her know in a space of complete vulnerability that I was having a lot of trouble navigating this newborn phase as well as working full
Yeah.
time. And so she said, listen,
Right.
how about we let you come in just PRN, meaning we'll call you when we need you, but don't just shut the door on genetic counseling. Don't shut the door on clinic, and
Mm-hmm.
just try to get your sea legs with this parenting thing. I mean, what I thought was going to be like, you're fired, get out of here, was like, hey, let's work with you. And so she did give me some grace, but she also gave me a time period before I had to like really make the choice. Like, was I going to jump off the
Yeah.
cliff, or was I going to continue kind of this like 1 foot in, 1 foot out? And so I took the 1 foot in, 1 foot out option. But being a genetic counselor, many of us rack up many student loans, and the 1 foot in, 1 foot out wasn't going to pay those student loans for me. And so that's when I really just started thinking, okay, this is a Band-Aid fix. How can I get into something that will allow me to show up again for my number one CEO, my little boss, but still pay these gosh darn student loans and,
Ugh.
grocery bills,
Right.
electricity,
Right.
the things you
Yeah.
need to just
Yeah.
be a human. And so I found some technical jobs online where you could work completely remotely. And I applied to a few, not thinking I would get it. But I also did spin the fact that I was able to connect with folks. I was able to teach folks really esoteric things. I mean, teaching folks about genetics, the kinds of testing they would need, the kinds of treatment they might need if they tested positive or if their pregnancy tested positive. I was pretty good at that. And I thought, hey, I could probably do that with technical stuff too. All that to say, I applied, and a small tech company took a chance on me and hired me. So that's honestly how I made the leap. And I still kept 1 foot in clinic while still working in the technical world. But all of a sudden, the technical job started paying me better than I would ever get at clinic, and giving me the work-life balance and giving me benefits. And all of a sudden, I was like, oh my gosh, I think I have to say
Yeah.
bye to clinic, because now these are all the things that I want. I'm still helping people. I'm still showing up to folks, but I still get to answer to my number one CEO as well. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of how I made the change. And I wasn't one who just jumped off the
Yeah.
cliff. I literally like had 1 foot
Mhm.
on the cliff's edge and was
Mm.
like hanging on with my fingers for
Yeah.
months until I was like, I think I can make this other job work.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, long-winded answer to
And
your
and
question.
and I love that. I think that that's the whole point, though. It is long-winded. It's not just a black and white. One day you wake up and you're like, I'm going to do this and just do it. Like, well, that's wonderful. And that works for some people. I think a lot of us have 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and are trying to figure out the most calculated risk that they could do, because we want to have, like you mentioned, the bills paid. We want to have, these things taken care of while, we're kind of trying to figure things out. But I really appreciate all of the detail that you shared because I mean, that's life. Like we do have to think of these things, but and what really stands out is you knew the type of, and I say balance in like air quotes because the work-life balance can shift based on, where we are in our lives and what we're doing. But like you knew what you wanted your life to look like and how you wanted work to play into your life because your life is not just work. It is all the things. It's your CEO, little mini CEOs. It's your partner. It's your, the thing that your hobbies. It's, all of these things in addition to working and helping others. And so knowing how that looks and how you want that to be and finding a remote job and realizing this pays more than those 14, 15-hour days when I was in, the office. Like I think that is that's a big component when people are trying to figure out how to make these decisions, really thinking about what they want their life to look like. And you had that picture and maybe you weren't sure what it was going to be, but you took this chance and then a company took a chance on you and then the rest is kind of history. But I
Yeah.
think the decision making process for a lot of people, someone who is in that role right now where they're working the 15-hour days and they are burnt out and they want something different, but they don't know what. And I think hearing those specifics that you shared it just helps us feel like one, we're not alone. We can all make these types of decisions. And two, it's not going to happen overnight. There's a lot of things to it. And we kind of got to do a little soul searching, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the big key. I mean, I don't want anyone to have to hit a rock bottom to make these transitions or these changes, but I think sometimes things, if things are just not quite bad enough,
yeah.
so many of us sit in relationships,
Mhm.
jobs. I mean, just so many situations where, and I don't want to take away from the fact that a lot of folks don't have the opportunity or the privilege to make those changes. But those of us that do and are in these situations where we do have some onus of control, we stick with like that slight misery for so much longer than we should.
Yeah.
And so I think, again, being able, self reflection is such an underrated asset, right? Being
Yeah.
able to truly reflect and ask yourself, like, basically, do I love myself enough to take the chance, to take the risk? Because
Mhm.
think of someone that you care about, someone that you love. And if they came to you asking that question, like, gosh, should I work 14-hour days? Like, it's really important for me to show up to my child, but I have this career that I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on. I love my work. And how would you talk to them?
Mhm.
Would you love them enough to give them, lay things out like, is this really working for you? Like, does it have to be a forever thing or can it be a just now thing? And I think that's one caveat I want to add. I never planned to walk completely away from genetic counseling or counseling. It was really going to be a just until. But then I had another baby and I was like, dang, well, I better, I got to keep this work life balance thing going. Um, but I will say, no decision is like truly forever. I mean, well, there's a few, but I mean, when it comes to career, work, those kind of things, changes and adjustments can be made. Just like I was 1 foot in, 1 foot out for a while to allow myself to adjust and see if that worked. So
Yeah.
all of that to say, I would never wish a rock bottom on anyone, but sometimes you do need that push where it does get bad enough to finally rip the band-aid off or make the hard, difficult decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how it was for you when you had decided to change course, but was it really, I mean, were you just kind of, okay, well, I'm not miserable enough. Like, let's keep it going. I mean, I don't know if that rings true for you as well, but
Oh, it rings so true. I mean, it definitely, there was this point where, after I got laid off and then I was like, yeah, I'll just find a new job and then couldn't. And then 350 job rejections later, I was like, what is wrong with me? I am on unemployment. I am on, I'm trying to figure this out. I can't even get a job in my local coffee shop. And so, really just feeling, I mean, I could have sunk into a very deep depression. And there were definitely moments where I was like, what, this sucks. I was trying to just figure things out and taking on whatever I could, a small contract job, and just picked another wonderful woman just hired me on with her marketing agency. But it took, it was the ups and downs of trying to like find the right opportunity and taking other opportunities that I thought, okay, this is going to work. And then it turns out it's terrible, even worse. Like I'd rather be unemployed than work for this particular company. And really kind of getting into this place where I'm like, well, if people aren't going to hire me, or the ones that will hire me, like this past one that did and is no longer, but like if that is what's going to be, then I'm going to just hire myself. I'm not going to settle. And I had to get to grips of like, I may not be making as much as I was, but I'm more willing to believe in myself and know that I can build my own work if that is what it comes down to. And so trying to figure out what that was, kind of just it started. And I think not having like the stress of a regular job too, I started to dream again. Like I started to have these, like, my mind was like functioning, like I could remember things. There wasn't the brain fog. I mean, literally, the podcast came out of a dream. Like I woke up one morning after having a dream of sitting in a studio with career flipper on the wall and like the little neon lights, and I was talking, and it was a very quick dream, but I was like, what is this? That's nuts. And then just kind of it wouldn't go away. I kept thinking about it, and then 3 months later I was like, okay, maybe I'll start a podcast and just do it. Or even the furniture flipping, like some people are like, oh, I wish I could find my calling. I'm like, yeah, I looked in the trash, the things, the places, like I'm literally pulling furniture out of, I'm not digging in dumpsters. But if it's on the outside of it, I'll pick it up and it looks, good, whatever. So I think it's just like you get to this point where you're like, I'm just going to make decisions for yourself. You're going to hire yourself because you believe in yourself, and you're willing to take sacrifices, because I wasn't willing to take just any job. I wasn't getting offered any job, but I also knew that if I'm applying for it, I'm not going to just settle for one that's going to, tear my soul apart. And knowing that it could have limited my options. But I'm not willing to settle. And if that means being in rock bottom a little more, okay, I'm going to own it. And then I'm not the type to sit around. I'm resourceful. I'm taking the messy action. I'm going to dig into it and just make these decisions because I want to live this type of life that I want to live. And I never would have done any of these creative projects, furniture flipping, the podcast, any of this had I not gotten laid off. It was definitely the slap in the face to remind me that one, no job is a stable job. Two, it's just business at the end of the day. No matter how wonderful the company is, and the company that I worked for before I got laid off was pretty fantastic, but it's business. And I know they made a business decision. It wasn't personal for me. And I can say that with confidence because I still talk to some of the people that are there. And so I just feel like you just got to kind of open your eyes to things, but you may not have the opportunity to open them until you get that slap in the face, until you hit that rock bottom. You're like, I'm making $0. How am I going to pay my rent? All right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And that's terrifying. Like, I mean, we do need to name, just honestly, the system is rigged, right? Like, it's meant to burn you out. It's meant to keep you from dreaming. It's meant to keep you locked into these routines and, places that you go to scroll or go to shop because it's convenient and quick and allows you to get back. Like, I don't want to sound completely radicalized, but I think as I get older, the more I realize how non-renewable the one most precious resource we have is time, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the real core truth, is that it was my time that I didn't have enough of when I became a new parent. I didn't know and I didn't realize, like, oh, okay, so this time that I have, this non-renewable resource, I'm either going to spend it in clinic for 14 hours, or I'm going to spend it in home sick because I have another infection because I wasn't able to pump correctly, or I'm going to spend it with my brand new little CEO that I'm obsessed with. And she's whipping me into shape and telling me if I'm doing a good job or a bad job, all of these things that um, it comes back to time. And that's what I'm hearing from you too. Like your time is precious, it is valuable. So why not pour back into things that are lighting you up? And I think again, it's that risk. It's not a path that's completely laid out with a 401k and vacation time, but there is such rich soil to be tilled, like we were saying. It's such a generative space when you get to dream again. And I mean, that's huge, Jenny. Like, how many of us talk about our dreams anymore as adults?
Yeah. Like I don't remember dreaming for years and years.
I mean, it gives me chills to hear that you're dreaming again and pursuing your dreams because I think there's something implicit with being a grown up. Like, magic goes away, right? Like, you don't get to
Yeah.
dream anymore or share about your dreams, or people don't even ask you, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because I'm still not all the way grown up. I'm going to be growing until I'm not anymore, right?
Yes.
Like, and I think that's part of the whole kind of career flippers ethos. We're on a journey and we're always constantly learning, but I think at the end of the day, if you're able to pour back into yourself, understand that time, that precious, precious resource is your own, and you're spending it doing what you want at least a little bit of the day, that lights you up a little bit, allowing you the space and the time to breathe and dream a little bit, like that's the secret sauce.
Right there. And that's so true. I feel like even for people who are listening that might be in that full-time job and not sure how to make a change, like it's just spend 5 minutes a day doing whatever it is, music or reading, or I don't know, go for a walk, like whatever. Like give yourself that time because that time is the most precious resource, just like you said. And that is, you can start small. You don't have to dive all the way in, unless you have to because you don't have no other option. It could be choice or
Right.
circumstance. And so I think, your story is so relatable and it's so true. And I just appreciate you being so vulnerable and sharing all of these details because I feel like it's just so important. We can't sugarcoat this. It's career flipping is not it's not pretty. In any of the stories that I've listened, that I've talked to people around the world, career flipping is not pretty. There's so many pieces to it. And yes, it leads to this beautiful, destination, but that destination is going to be continuously evolving. It's going to be beautiful because you got to keep watering the grass
100%.
and you got to keep cleaning up the dog do and you got to keep all of the things going and it's still work. And so I just really appreciate you sharing your story and yeah, just getting real about it. So thank you, Lauren.
Oh, I'm so, so happy to share. I'm grateful for the space to share. And if it does help anyone that's going through any of those difficult, or I won't say difficult, challenging transitions, new ways of being, regardless of the circumstance that got you there, I hope it helps a little. But yeah, thank
Yeah,
you so much, Jenny. This has been such a pleasure. I always love chatting with you, and this has
insane.
been great.
Thank you. And I would love for people to connect with you one way or another. How can they find you? How can they reach out to you?
Well, you can always find me on LinkedIn, where we all have to show up, I think, as grown-ups these days, or you don't exist.
Yeah.
But I also am starting my own little side hustle as well. I am offering coaching. So while I am a licensed therapist, this is only going to be coaching. And so you can find me at perfectedpath.com, and I'll just be taking on, a very small handful of clients to help out. But again, this isn't mental health care. This is truly coaching to either help you through different life transitions, to really help find what lights you up, or even just to help with someone keeping you accountable and giving you next steps to try to reach your own goals, or maybe even find out what your dreams are. Because again, I think it can be really muddled and clouded in this day and age with all the noise. So yeah, that's about it that I have to share.
That's amazing, Lauren. Thank you so much. I appreciate you and what a gift that you're giving to also offer the coaching.
Oh,
Incredible.
well, don't worry, I'm charging for it. It's not a gift. No,
As you should.
I kid, but I'm all about a fair exchange for your time and mine. So anyway, Jenny,
Exactly.
thanks again for having me, and hopefully we can do this again soon.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Career Flipper. Be sure to connect with Lauren using the links in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend who might need a little boost of inspiration. Make sure to subscribe for more flippin' episodes like Lauren's every week. If you have a second, leaving a review might seem small, but it really helps the show reach more career flippers around the world. And if you have a career flip story of your own to share on a future episode, tell me about it. Send me an email, hello@thecareerflipper.com. I'd love to hear from you. What I love most about doing this podcast is the chance that these stories might be the spark that someone needs to break free from feeling stuck and finally taking that first step. And I know that first step is really tough. I've been there, done that. It's so worth it. I can tell you from the other side, it really helps you grow and opens doors to something you maybe have never even imagined. And it's a step that can really change everything. And one step is all you need. Keep on your path, my friend. What's the best